So yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Amit Joshipura, Director for Global Marketing at Philips. I oversee, all marketing functions for my specific business category, and thrilled to be here and to speak with these esteemed gentlemen. I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Sure. Hi, my name's Dave Rosner. I'm the CMO of Audigent. We're the leading data activation, curation, and identity platform, and we've just been reinventing how digital advertising and media work.
Hey y'all, Alon, Krifcher, Director of Sales Engineering for Jacquard. We are an AI-powered platform for helping brands generate content on their direct digital channels, email, mobile, SMS, etc. that is optimized, personalized, on-brand, highly performant. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So first question, I think, marketing technology has seen a lot of innovation. It's been developing quite well with everything that's available in companies MarTech and all the partners out there in the ecosystem that can get to many people in an efficient way. But I think what could be interesting is those much harder to reach audience members, right? Whether it be for regulation or de-identifying characteristics to get to them. So I'm kind of curious with your companies, how do you guys actually try to get to some of those harder to reach niche populations? That I think is what every company now is trying to invest in, right? We get most of the eyeballs where we know where they are, but the ones that we want to get to that, are hiding, quote unquote, or masked behind, certain regulations are not easy to reach to. So what do you guys do to, kind of tap into those niche audiences?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
The sound up here is really interesting. A lot of the monitor. I'm not used to hearing myself like this. So Audigent started out as a DMP, which is a data management platform. We made sense of all the data that the record labels were getting. So they were in a situation where they were finding artists, building artists, developing artists, shooting the videos. And then when it came to actually re-reaching those audiences, Facebook would have all the information. So we said, if you're building those audiences, you should be able to keep track of them so you can remarket to them once they're fans. So we started out pure play as a data company, and one of the areas, especially for programmatic curation, which is really just the fancier way of saying we can bring data into real time in advertising so you can test any idea you have in terms of who you want to reach and see how it's working right now. The old way, which is shocking unless you work in programmatic, you didn't know how your data or how your segments that you were targeting were working for like a month or 45 days. So the first area that we've really jumped out in is highly regulated businesses, because we already had to be incredibly, incredibly buttoned up about how data was being used and how we can bring it into the process. So we were really excited. I think it was Tuesday night. Programmatic IO from iExchanger was doing their awards, and our partner Butler Till, which is an independent agency that does a ton in the pharma space, had won their award for best use of data, and we had powered a lot of their programs. And it's really about understanding back to the question about regulation, it's really about understanding where the regulations are now and being able to have total control over how you're using data to reach customers and get smarter. So for them, we can use a lot of contextual data, and then once we see those segments are working, we can start to say, if someone's interested in this and therefore might be a good target for medication, let's start to do predictive modeling off of that. And we ended up delivering for them, bringing down their eCPM by 48% and bringing their acquisition cost down by 26%. I promised you I'd bring numbers. So like a very meaningful delivery, and especially in the backdrop of pharma being more regulated. So it is a very unique moment to be in highly regulated businesses, because the change is happening so quickly, and everyone in this room is responsible for not only knowing what they are, but legally responsible for making sure that's happening in their plans.
Yeah, I think that, so we work with brands who basically are marketing, again, directly digital. So talking about legal, talking about regulations, you better have permission to email them, push them, send them SMS, et cetera, before actually messaging them in that way. So I think it's less about like unlocking populations that we didn't have before, and more about what were they unable to do with existing technology, old school technology around ESPs, CEPs, marketing in that way. And so what we're starting to see is, with the rise of LLMs, with the rise of more and better generative AI, there's the solution is coming in. You can now have enough content to send to them. So historically, when you weren't able to reach an audience, you weren't able to reach a person, it was because you just didn't have enough copy or didn't have enough content to send to that person, to send to that audience, to send to that segment. So you didn't, right? And now it's all about, okay, LLMs are able to provide, as long as they're on brand, as long as they're trustworthy, as long as they're accessible, but they're now able to provide the ability to automate and scale that process so you don't have kind of a content supply chain problem. It's now a matter of figuring out the right strategy, figuring out the right channel, those things, rather than even the baseline problem of like, do I even have content to send to this person?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a Philips perspective, being in healthcare, we navigate, HIPAA and patient de-identification matters that typically will work with an agency who can scour lead lists for our campaigns, and we'll discover that we can only really access like 5 to 10% of them, and so it becomes a challenge. And so what we're seeing out in the market is actually vendors and agencies like your company are able to better curate these lists for us to get to. The other challenge with healthcare is there's several different intermediaries before you actually get to the consumer who's then going to get access to the product, right? So it could be that we have a good, potential contact list of people, but when you bring in the economic, barriers or the 2 or 3 stops of a physician and a payer, et cetera, that will eventually whittle down that list to not a very appetizing population. Some of these agencies are already able to use their technologies to weed out that through their, intelligent, scoring, and they just are able to know that, or they've already kind of pre-qualified the list that we get or the context we get, so we know that we're going to get a much better ROI, and we're not going to lose, 70% because of affordability issues or what have you. So we're very excited and optimistic with what people are doing on the vendor side in these technologies or these ecosystems to ensure that the campaigns I build, the access that we're trying to build to inform and educate about our products are actually going to get to people that can convert from awareness to purchase, and obviously we see the return on that. So I think that's important.
And on the regulation side, it's amazing because the regulations are getting much more strict, and we do a lot with building purpose-driven marketplaces. And some of the new pharma rules are making that much more difficult. So you would expect that your deliverables would be going down because you've got the same budget usually, but more regulation. But what we're seeing is the technology is getting so much better that you are able to take probabilistic data, like the workarounds and how fast innovation is happening, especially in this space of understanding people are in general rather than using somebody's personal information. That technology is growing faster than the regulations are cutting off opportunities. So we're actually more data privacy centric than we've ever been, and better at still finding the right people who meet the requirements, whether that's age or income or conditions.
Yeah, no, I think it's always the challenge of, our policies staying up to speed to technologies, and they're always going to have like a lagging, but the companies that can, be adaptable and flexible, large, manufacturers like us find a lot of value in that. So
well, I have a question because we work with a lot of pharma companies. Okay. If a pharma company accepts data from a consumer, how many years are they responsible for holding on to that data? Does anyone have a guess on this?
That's a good question. Just yell it out.
Yell it out. 0. So we had 10 to 0. It's forever. So if you're the head of data for a pharmaceutical company and you ask someone for a piece of information as they're logging onto your site, you're responsible for that forever, which is pretty intimidating.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Let's talk about personalization, right? We're obviously that's in the name of the panel, and look, we're all sophisticated marketers. We know that gone are the days where an intelligent consumer is going to, just go and buy something that has no reflection of their values, or I mean, right, like there's our customers are so sophisticated, and there's so many companies that are promising a very niche personalized experience, so that is expected by every company to deliver. But the reality is that companies also have to protect their margins. They have to be efficient with their dollars, and I mean, given the economy and everything, we don't have the coffers, they're not as flushed as they used to be. So I guess the question is, like, is there such a thing as like too personalized, or how do you guys toe the line of meeting the demands of your customers who want personalization and the consumers are expecting it, but also having to protect and run a business efficiently and economically? And how do you kind of navigate that that battle, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again in the direct landscape, there might be such thing, but we haven't reached it yet. Like I personally, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, I don't get emails or push notifications that I'm like, oh my gosh, this company knows way too much about me. If anything, it's the vast opposite, where it's like they're messaging me about stuff that I haven't thought about, that I haven't looked at, and not in the predictive way, not in the like next best offer way, more in the just like they're just guessing at this point. So there might be that threshold in how you're being marketed and communicated to through direct channels, but I don't think we've reached it yet. And I actually hope that one day we do reach the point of we've gone too far, because then we can find the right middle balance. But because of the existing technologies, because of what marketers can use, both from a data perspective and a technology perspective, we're just not there yet.
Yeah, I think we actually see that in other places in the data world where I'm forgetting the car manufacturer who, on a whim, decided to use its telematics in order, with the idea is once you signed in, but they made it mandatory to sign in for this, that you would get a discount on your insurance. And they were like, oh, this is cool. And it wasn't even a revenue stream for the car manufacturer. They just wanted to dip their toe in the water of a SaaS data play. And people started losing their insurance because the car was reporting back they weren't driving according to the safety measures. And so you end up in like, I think that's a really interesting and scary future. I think on the marketing side, people are definitely ratcheting back and maybe being too polite to the point where we're feeling we're not getting the messages we want. The other side of that, outside of the messaging, is the media. And I spent a long time at media agencies at IPG. And we were always trying to figure out, we were always doing this incredible job of understanding our consumer, but we couldn't buy against them. We could do creative that made sense for them, but then we always had to translate it into demos when we were buying. And now there's so much data that you can buy against individual segments. So for Alcon, which is sort of in the pharma space, the contact company, we had to build for them this. We were trying to get online eye exams as a KPI, and we had thousands of different ideas of who their segments could be. So incredibly personalized, and then we could see which ones were working, and it ended up being the top driver they've ever had for driving online eye exams for that part of their business. So I think we can be a lot more thoughtful. I think if we think of personalization as being thoughtful, which is I think what good marketers do with everything they're doing. If we bring that into the media side of that and say, hey, let's be really thoughtful and have some fun experiments around what do we think are the levers that are going to be interesting. It could be that you're into yoga. It could be your age. It could be your energy profile. All these things. Let's test those and be really, really personalized on how we're targeting, and then we can bring that forward. And the consumer won't know it. They'll just know it, to your point, that they're getting a message that they're like, wow, this feels really good. This is like something I wanted to know.
And I think that, again, is our job as marketers is to give outstanding experiences. And part of that experience, total C360, looking at whether it's media, direct channels, in the product itself, is around giving them what they want. So it's about yoga, right? Is that the thing that they need? And making sure that you can communicate that effectively is really important. Making sure it doesn't seem creepy is really important. I hope you're right that, it's about us dialing back and being more polite. I think that there are some limitations to it for sure, but hopefully, this is all about creating that outstanding experience for our customers.
Well, in the motion picture space, the MPAA ratings is actually not a government board. It was a board set by the entertainment companies to stay ahead of the government regulation. I think that's right. Someone speak up if I'm wrong. I worked with Fox for a little bit. And so I think we have major brands have been really thoughtful about how they use personalization in a positive way.
And then there's, of course, the regulation side of GDPR comes into play in Europe, right? And I think that's a strong step towards maybe not the right application, but I think it's the right step towards our own privacy, our own data privacy is really important. So how can organizations, brands use the data in the right way, but not overstep?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I've seen so before my time at Philips, I was at Google, and I think what we did well with the team I was on there was knowing where personalization made the difference or moved the needle versus where it became more of a distraction or probably more expensive or unwieldy. So, Google acquired Fitbit, and I think this is such a fascinating story of how the demographics of the Fitbit wearable device have changed over the trajectory of the device as it's been in the market. So in the first 10 years of its existence, it was, as you would imagine, intuitively meant for male athletes, right? Typically, people that were trying to, win Ironman competitions, what have you, kind of that traditional athlete persona. And then it shifted, which was fantastic. And we realized with, the data we were tracking on and consumer insights that we're getting from listening to online chatter that our demographic shifted to women. And so I think it would have been very easy for us to then quickly pivot to advertising to women athletes, but we had a very smart marketing team that said, no, I think we have to unpack more to see, is it women athletes? And what we discovered was that actually what's driving the motivation for women to get a Fitbit is that a lot of women, after they have a child, or actually when they get divorced, are in this kind of like 2.0 of their life, right? They're want to get back to their pre-pregnancy figure, or they're going through a major shift, in their identity or in their womanhood, if you will. And that was so powerful for us to personalize our advertising to speak to that audience of women that are going through that very emotionally specific and authentic life transformation. And it made a huge difference, right? Because we were speaking directly to a stage of a woman's life that really resonated with them. And all of our advertising was around, kind of starting over, and it just did really well. In fact, to the point that we shifted from 70-30 male-female to 60-40 female-male. But then a personalization experiment that didn't do so well and we quickly stopped was, now that we were now winning more with women, we decided to introduce a luxury brand, or kind of like a designer Fitbit watch that you can pair not only with your Lululemon working out gear, but then also when you're going out, with your female friends on a night out in the town. That didn't do as well. And so we quickly abandoned kind of that additional SKU, because that personalization, started adding more weight to the company in terms of manufacturing, et cetera. So I think that's also really powerful, right? Like knowing where does personalization, either whether it's advertising or the messaging or the tone of messaging that you're doing, matters or actually moves the needle, but where it doesn't is maybe trying to make, SKUs of products that speak to every single niche customer, and you realize that it's just not getting the return that you want. So I think that's an important point when you talk about personalization. Okay, so let's talk AI. I know that it's like a lot of reaction to that because it's so overused and everyone talks about it. But I guess I'm curious to see first, how does your company assess whether you're using AI, effectively and properly, versus just being on the bandwagon of saying that you have it and including it in your pitch deck when you're talking to customers, so you don't feel like you're left behind or there's FOMO. And kind of talk. So, how do you govern or ensure that it's being deployed appropriately and not just everyone's trying to get on the bandwagon? And then also, where have been some interesting use cases that you'd want to share with the group?
Yeah. So So we're a data company, and we've been using AI and ML. I guess that's the older generation, at least how people talked about it before LLMs. So it's in the deck, but it's definitely not front and center. And I also think it's okay as a marketer to be skeptical of AI. There's like a lot of pressure right now to be all in on AI. So the way we're looking at it at Audigent is in really two ways. So there's the fringe cases where individual groups are using it, like, so I'm the CMO, we might be using it to make our writing a little better. So as an assistant, so I don't have to go to my sister who's a PhD in English and get sardonic comments back with English that no one would ever use when I'm trying to write an email to a client. So that is a huge upgrade that I don't have to be judged by my sister. The place we're using it for our business, though, is really about data privacy. So with AI, the probabilistic data of the future will be better than the deterministic data of today, which is to say, we'll be able to tell without knowing who you are in particular. We'll be able to know that somebody who's read this article in this place, on this kind of device, with this kind of other information associated with it, we'll have enough without knowing who you are, just by you as a signal indicating what you're interested in by what you're reading, to target really, really well. And that will solve a huge number of regulatory issues because we won't be using people's personal information. So we will not be pushing any of the privacy problems. So I think for us, it's the AI will, when it's in the right spot, will be the equivalent of having 100 more data scientists on staff working on every campaign, because it'll just bring that firepower to it. And that's how we're building our tech stack, is using some now and getting ready for when it's at that point.
We're an AI-powered software system for marketers, so please don't be skeptical. Dave? No, I totally agree. I think that, like, for you, it's like 100 extra data analysts. For us, it's really 100 extra copywriters, right? So when thinking about AI, it's around access, scale, and trust. So is this an accessible tool? Is this a tool that you and your organization can use both from a regulatory perspective, but also from just like a usability perspective? Can this scale with your business? If you have tens or hundreds of millions or even billions of data points, if you're sending billions and billions of emails or push notifications a year, does this scale with your business? And then do you trust it, right? Is this a system that you can trust to do what it is supposed to do? If you need to have oversight over everything that AI is doing, it defeats the purpose of all of that, right? This is meant to be a tool that increases automation, that increases scale, and that allows your teams to do what they are doing just better, right? So we were talking at lunch that, like, you wouldn't take the output of a ChatGPT prompt and immediately implement it. It's meant to be ideation. It's meant to help you as a baseline to get started, right, as a template. That is really where I think AI becomes so powerful, is it's as a raw material. It's as a tool, not as an end result. So find the right application of it. Find the right way where let the machines do what they do best, which is access and process a ton of data, right? Run machine learning algorithms on success criteria, on analytics, on KPIs, and then allow the humans to do what they do best, which is be creative, which is understand their audience as well as they do, right? It's brands that know their customers, their users, better than any machine can ever know it. So when you combine those two, when you find kind of that sweet spot of this is the machine that can do what machines do best, this is the person that can do what people do best, combine those two, now you're really cooking, right? And so I think that, you know, it's about finding that access, scale, and trust, trusting that system, allowing it to access and allowing it to scale, and then being able to access it in a meaningful way that fits into your business and into your strategy.
And in the short term, I'm sold on your AI, but I think that's a perfect application. You know, I forgot what the article was, but it was saying AI got here, large language models got here, and what are they doing? We think they're taking the jobs of, like, screenwriters and songwriters. Like, those aren't the jobs we wanted to give away. Those are the jobs we wanted to keep. I think for email and sort of personalization, great. As a marketer, I think it's okay not to be all in on AI. I've spoken to so many brands who are figuring out how to make it part of their jobs. but there's a really good use case for everybody in this room to get that like extra 10% out of your day because you have a digital assistant that helps you with something really specific, whether it's grammar or checking or ideation or naming. Like there's all these things that you can shave a little bit more time, you can build a little bit more time into your week. And my feeling is if a marketer has a little bit more time, that opens up one more idea. And that one more idea is always where you get your advantage because more ideas running in the market is always going to give you a better outcome. So, but I think I would like to know that not everybody is all in on AI, even if we're experimenting with it.
Yeah, I think one thing I think we're doing well is, I mean, within marketing, there's these companies that are able to like codify the best commercials, or I mean, within your battery or your repository of advertisements you've done, they can quickly codify like the emotions of each ad, and then quickly extrapolate which were the most successful. And so essentially you can then reverse engineer like your most future winning ads based on how previous ads ran in a very like mathematical and algorithmic driven way. So that's great. But then I think where a company might falter is, okay, let's now put AI to generate the taglines or the text or the writing. No, you still have humans who do that, because I don't care how fast ChatGPT can, come up with an incredible pithy statement. Like we hire intelligent copywriters because they know how to, play with words, and that's the human emotional element that we have. So that's what I think is important, is like use it, to quickly get to a winning formula, if you will, but then still have the humans that know how to do what they do best.
I agree and I disagree. I think that one of the things here is actually LLMs are getting so much better at those like being punny. Like if you start to ask ChatGPT to be punny, it's much better. And with 4.0 just coming out, like they're getting better at actually sounding more human and more creative. So I think that, one of the things that we're looking at as an organization is we actually built our own large language model. We've been around for about 10 years now, so pre-ChatGPT. And our company was founded on technology that we built internally. It's a much more deterministic model of how language is generated. With the rise of LLMs, and more importantly, with the improvement of LLMs, we're actually seeing that these systems can be just as good, if not better, than a lot of content that's being written by humans. And that has nothing to do with how good a copywriter is. It's just around how much it can generate. And then once you add in kind of the performance prediction side of it, so figuring out not what is the right, like, can I generate the one subject line that's really good, or the right one blog post that's really good. It's let the system generate hundreds or thousands of them, and then use AI to kind of stack rank, figure out which one is going to perform really well based on that historical data, based on what has worked in the past, right? So we're really fascinated by the improvement of LLMs to sound so much more like humans. We're excited about it because it's going to, like Dave said, I think unlock the ability for marketers to actually run with this new idea, this new strategy that they just simply don't have time before.
When you were talking about using AI to like check your entire history of creative, I actually think that's one of the areas where humans get it really right, because AI, at least most data models, look backwards to predict going forwards. But most of the best career moments that will happen across the companies in this room are because you're doing something different. And so your biggest success might be because you broke the rules, or might be because you thought of something that no one had thought of, or you did the same spot that failed 4 years ago and now is culturally the right moment. So I think I'm agreeing with the AI, with Alon's notion on AI. I think the notion of just using computers to do the thing they do well, which is so much complexity, 1,000 taglines across 5 million people, and then seeing which ones rise to the top. I think that's a great tool, but thinking about where your next big moment will come from, I think you've got to look forward instead of looking backwards a lot for that.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt the humanness of AI. I mean, I'm so fed up with dating apps. I'm about a week away from having AI generate my perfect partner and just, ride in the sunset with a with an avatar. So it is what it is. I think that's the world we're living in now. I mean, I've heard about, AI boyfriends and girlfriends, and I think it's actually doing pretty well. So because you're probably talking AI on the dating apps anyways. Okay, cool. I think we have a couple minutes remaining. I'm open to a couple questions from the audience. If anyone is so brave to raise their hand. Okay, perfect. We got one taker. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that there's a difference between kind of the more ad tech world and kind of the direct marketing world. So and we talked about this a little bit before, that Dave has said that you absolutely do get creepy from the more ad tech side, media side of things. When it comes to direct messaging and marketing, again, I haven't seen that line. Now, I think that how do you find it? Well, short of literally getting extremely creepy and getting responses back or seeing your brand decrease, right? I think that there's kind of a tolerance level that you're looking for. So you're figuring out what is, and this is maybe a basic example, but on the scale of like boring to super clickbaity, right? You need to be somewhere in the middle. If you're super clickbaity, if you're too personalized, this is going to ruin brand loyalty, brand affinity, right? So you need to kind of find that balance between it. And the truth is, and again, we've seen this because of the data that we've been collecting over the last decade, is like anywhere in that space is good. If you are like 5% away from too much, or 10% away, or 30% away, as long as you're sort of above the boring line, you're actually doing really well. And you'll continue to see great engagement and better brand loyalty.
Yeah, the biggest snub when I was at creative agencies forever, you could give a piece of creative is your strategy is showing. So I think that's a really good yardstick. You should know everything. Like knowing everything about your consumers can be a really good thing. But then what are you pulling forward to share with them? That's where I think you can say, I think this will be compelling, but they don't need to know that I know all their shopping behaviors on my site and that I know that they spend 60 times more than the average person to pick a pair of jeans and that they're neurotic about their jeans, right? But you can help them find that perfect pair of jeans based on their purchase history. So I think that's where I feel like the human being is a really good asset in the mix. Like getting all the information, having the tools synthesize it, and then, okay, so I know all this. This is how I want to take it forward. And I feel like BarkBox is a great example here. Like they know your dog's birthday, they know how big your dog is, and you've told them all this. And so it's like really wonderful that they understand it. Where I was doing a panel with the American Airlines for Brand Innovators, and they get a lot of personal information because you're signing up for a flight, which is really personal. That is nowhere near marketing. Like they have that walled off, it can't be used. So I think those are two good rules and you won't creep out your consumers.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your attention, and definitely find us afterwards, and we can have more conversations. So, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.